The gate log for Meridian, Pacific Flight 219, was still routine when the first small request came through. A woman with a rolling suitcase asked whether the aircraft boarded by zone or by row. Priya Nandan checked her badge, glanced at the screen, and answered without looking up. Zone first, ma'am, then row. We'll call it over the speaker. No hesitation, no extra explanation. A man in a wrinkled suit asked if he could pre-board for a connecting flight anxiety. Priya nodded once, tapped a note into the tablet, and waved him through. Courtesy pre-board? Connection risk. Easy. A woman traveling with a toddler asked about the bassinet bulkhead seat. Priya checked the manifest, confirmed the assignment, and printed a new boarding pass without comment. Nobody watched these exchanges. They weren't interesting. Desiree Coleman had been at the gate for 40 minutes already. Seated near the accessible boarding sign in her competition chair, duffel bag strapped along the frame, a folded blanket across her knees against the terminal's air conditioning. She had checked in online. She had called ahead, as she always did, to confirm the aisle chair would be ready and that the gate agent would know she required boarding before general zones, not because she needed help walking, but because the aisle chair transfer took time the standard boarding window didn't allow. She had 2 gold medals in a case at home and a bronze from 4 months ago in her carry-on, wrapped in a t-shirt so it wouldn't rattle. None of that was visible from the gate podium. What was visible? A young black woman in a wheelchair, hoodie sleeves pushed to her elbows, headphones around her neck, seat 2A on her boarding pass. Priya looked at the accessible boarding request flagged on the manifest, then looked at Desiree, then looked back at the screen. She typed something before she'd spoken a single word to her. Passenger requesting early wheelchair boarding, ramp equipment status pending. Desiree hadn't asked about a ramp. She'd asked 3 separate times through the airline's accessibility line for early boarding and aisle chair assistance, which had been confirmed via email that morning. Ma'am, Priya said, approaching the podium's edge, we're going to need a few minutes. The ramp's being checked. Desiree adjusted her blanket. I don't need the ramp. I need the aisle chair for the jet bridge transfer like I confirmed this morning. Priya's smile didn't change, but her eyes moved to the tablet. Right, well, we have to verify equipment either way. Some black passengers requesting mobility assistance, she typed. Though nobody at the gate had said assistance was in question, Desiree saw the shape of the sentence starting, not the words. Just the tilt of Priya's head toward the screen instead of toward her. A man in a Meridian Pacific fleece vest walked past the podium pushing an aisle chair. Empty, wheels turning smoothly, clearly operational. He set it against the wall 6 feet from Desiree and kept walking without acknowledging her. Desiree watched it sit there. Excuse me, she said. Is that chair for me? Priya glanced over. That's a spare unit. We're still confirming your equipment authorization. Authorization for what? Desiree said. I already have a confirmation number. She held up her phone, the email thread visible. Subject line accessibility confirmed. Flight 219. Priya took the phone, looked at it for less than 2 seconds and handed it back. That confirms the request. It doesn't confirm equipment readiness today. Desiree kept her voice even. The chair is right there. It's not assigned yet, Priya said. We have a process. Behind her, a man in a charcoal blazer approached, the podium with a rolling briefcase and a phone pressed to his ear. He lowered it just enough to speak. Is boarding starting soon? I've got a tight connection in Denver. Priya's posture shifted before she'd finished the sentence. One moment, sir, she said, and turned fully toward him, leaving Desiree mid-conversation. The man, Garrett Voss, glanced down at Desiree's wheelchair, then at the empty aisle chair against the wall, then back at Priya. Is there a delay? Priya lowered her voice slightly, though not quietly enough. We're just verifying an equipment situation before general boarding. Garrett nodded like this made sense to him. Understood. I really can't miss this connection. Desiree looked between them. I'm not the delay. My equipment is right there. Nobody answered her. A gate supervisor, Marcus Whitfield, approached from the jet bridge door, radio clipped to his shoulder. Priya waved him over before Desiree could speak again. We've got a passenger situation, Priya said. Possible equipment mismatch for wheelchair boarding. Marcus looked at the tablet, not at Desiree. What's the mismatch? Priya hesitated for the first time. The confirmed request says manual transfer assist. The passenger's chair looks like a sport model. We want to be sure the aisle chair is compatible. Desiree exhaled slowly. It's a wheelchair. Any aisle chair is compatible. I've flown 41 times this year. Marcus finally looked at her, eyes moving over the chair's frame. The competition decals half peeled from travel wear, the duffel bag. Ma'am, we just need a minute to confirm compatibility for safety. Desiree pulled out her phone again. This is the same aisle chair model Meridian, Pacific used on my flight to Denver in March. I have the confirmation from that. Flight 2. Marcus didn't take the phone. That's a different flight, he said. Desiree felt the sentence land somewhere specific. A place built for people who weren't supposed to argue, with a supervisor holding a radio. A woman near gate 19 seating row. Alina Cho had lowered her laptop screen halfway. She wasn't watching Garrett Voss check his phone. She was watching the tablet in Priya's hands. The way the cursor blinked over a field that hadn't existed on any of the earlier boarding interactions. She raised her own phone slightly, camera already open, not recording yet. Desiree typed a message with her thumb, phone angled downward. Coach, they're stalling my boarding again. Confirmed equipment, they're calling it a mismatch. Document if this escalates. She set the phone in her lap, screen facing up, and looked at Marcus. I'd like to speak to someone. Who can authorize the equipment I already confirmed this morning? Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. I am that person. Then authorize it, Desiree said. There was a pause long enough for Garrett to glance at his watch. Marcus turned to Priya. Flag it as a conditional board pending confirmation. Priya typed. Desiree watched the tablet from her angle upside down. But she'd learned to read screens quickly. At podiums, at ticket counters, at rental desks. The words settled into the record before anyone had explained them to her. Passenger boarding held, equipment verification incomplete. Passenger uncooperative regarding standard process. Desiree hadn't refused anything. She'd asked one question. I haven't refused a single thing, she said. I've asked you to use the chair that's sitting right there. Marcus didn't look at the tablet again. We're not trying to make this difficult. Then don't, Desiree said. Garrett Voss, checking his watch a second time, said. Not unkindly, but not helpfully either. Maybe it'd be faster to just let general boarding start and sort this out after. Marcus nodded slightly, as if Garrett had offered a solution rather than a preference. We can hold your zone for a few minutes while we finish this. Desiree looked at him. Hold my zone? I was supposed to board 20 minutes ago. 2 airport service officers arrived near the jet bridge entrance. Summoned by a call Desiree hadn't heard placed. They'd been given a short version of something. That was clear from how their eyes moved, first to Marcus, then the tablet, then to Desiree. Ma'am, the lead officer said, we've had a report of a passenger refusing standard boarding procedure. Desiree kept both hands visible on the wheels of her chair. I have a confirmed accommodation request from this morning. I have not refused anything. I asked why an already approved aisle chair wasn't being used. The officer looked at Marcus. Marcus said she's been uncooperative with equipment verification. Desiree didn't raise her voice. Pull the confirmation email. It has a timestamp. It has a case number. The officer hesitated. Alina Cho, 3 rows back, raised her phone the rest of the way and began recording. Not Desiree's face, the tablet screen over Priya's shoulder, angled just enough to catch the held boarding note as Marcus scrolled past it. The gate agent's radio crackled. A voice, tired and administrative, asked whether 219 was still on schedule for pushback. Marcus answered before thinking, we've got a passenger accommodation issue at the gate. Desiree heard it land the way Priya's earlier note had landed. Not a delay caused by an aircraft. A delay caused by her. The lead officer crouched slightly, not quite eye level, close enough that Desiree could smell coffee on his breath. Ma'am, I need you to come with us to sort this out away from the gate. Desiree kept both hands steady on her wheels. I am a ticketed confirmed passenger. My accommodation was approved in writing. I do not consent to being removed from this boarding line. The officer looked at Marcus. Marcus said nothing, which Desiree understood immediately was itself an answer. The officer reached toward the handles of her chair. Desiree said, do not touch my chair without my consent. That is assistive equipment, not luggage. The officer's hand paused midair. Behind him, Garrett Voss had already stepped past the podium toward the jet bridge. Boarding pass in hand, uninterrupted, unquestioned, his zone somehow already open. Marcus's radio crackled again. This time the voice on the other end wasn't the gate operations line. It carried a different weight, clipped and unhurried. Hold flight 219 at the gate. Do not close doors. Compliance escalation in progress. Marcus looked at the radio like it had spoken out of turn. Priya glanced at her tablet, then at Marcus. Uncertain now which instruction outranked the other. A woman in an airline blazer with a laminated badge reading, Regional Accessibility Compliance, walked briskly from the concourse. Tablet already open. A second staff member behind her pushing. The aisle chair that had sat unused against the wall for the last 15 minutes. Desiree recognized the name on the badge from the confirmation email that morning. Renata Ose. Before anyone explains anything, Renata said, I need the accommodation request and the boarding log in that order. Marcus handed over his tablet without argument this time. Renata scrolled. The gate stayed quiet while her eyes moved down the entries. Accommodation request filed 6 days ago. Confirmed same day. Aisle chair assignment, confirmed this morning, 7:18 a.m. No equipment flag anywhere in the original file. She looked up. When was the equipment mismatch note entered? Priya's mouth opened, then closed. Renata answered her own question by checking the timestamp. 11 minutes after boarding was scheduled to begin. After the passenger had already been sitting at this gate for 40 minutes. Desiree said, "That record still says I was uncooperative." Renata nodded once. "It does. I refuse nothing." "I know," Renata said. She typed, "Correction. Passenger accommodation was confirmed and valid prior to boarding. No equipment discrepancy existed. Boarding delay was not caused by passenger conduct." She locked the entry. A gray tag appeared beneath it, preserved under accessibility compliance hold. The lead officer stepped back from Desiree's chair entirely, hand dropping from where it had hovered near the handle. Renata turned to him. "Your report will need to reflect that this call was placed based on a staff note with no observed refusal, only a delayed accommodation." The officer looked at Marcus, who looked at the floor. Renata turned to Marcus. "Why was a passenger with a confirmed accommodation held at the gate, while general boarding proceeded around her?" Marcus said, "We wanted to be sure the aisle chair fit her needs safely." Renata looked at the tablet again. "The aisle chair sitting against that wall is the standard unit used on every Meridian Pacific narrow-body aircraft. It is compatible with every manual chair we accommodate. That determination doesn't require 15 minutes or an officer call. It requires walking 6 feet," Priya said quietly. "I followed the supervisor's instruction. You entered uncooperative into a passenger record without an incident to support it." Renata said, "Access to accommodation notes is suspended pending review." Priya's face went still in the way. Faces go when a sentence lands somewhere permanent. Marcus said this was about caution, not anything else. "Caution doesn't need an officer," Renata said. "Caution doesn't need to let general boarding continue around a passenger." "Who arrived first?" She turned to Desiree. "Miss Coleman, your aisle chair transfer will happen now, at the jet bridge door, with the unit that was available this entire time." Desiree looked at the empty aisle chair, then at Renata. "I want the accommodation record corrected before I board, not after." Renata nodded. "Already entered." She turned the tablet so Desiree could read it herself. The words sat where the earlier ones had sat, in the same clean font, meaning something different now. Passenger conduct was not a factor. Delay originated with staff process, not equipment. Alina Cho lowered her phone, recording still saved, and caught Desiree's eye for just a moment. Desiree gave a small nod. Renata continued into her tablet. Gate staff radio contact, requesting officer assistance based solely on passenger declining, to answer repeated questions about equipment already confirmed. She looked toward the officer. "Your incident report will need to note the confirmation timestamp." He didn't argue. The aisle chair transfer took 90 seconds. Desiree had done it more times than she could count. Knew exactly how to angle her weight, how to keep her hands steady on the rails. Nobody at the jet bridge door needed to ask her anything twice. 6 weeks later, Meridian Pacific's Accessibility Division audited every gate level. Accommodation delay logged across its hub airports for the previous quarter. 31 entries were reopened. 19 had been resolved, without escalation once confirmation. Timestamps were checked. 8 had involved an officer call placed before any documented refusal existed. Marcus Whitfield was reassigned out of supervisory gate operations. Pending a service conduct review, Priya Nandan retained her position after completing a mandatory accommodation verification course. Her node entry permissions restricted for 90 days. Renata Ose's accessibility hold protocol, requiring any equipment mismatch, flagged to be verified against the original confirmation. Record before boarding could be delayed. Became standard across the airline's gate training within 4 months. A year later, the first slide in Meridian Pacific's new hire gate training deck didn't show Desiree's name. It didn't show her medals. It showed a single boarding log entry, time-stamped, with the words uncooperative regarding standard process struck through in red, and beneath it in plain black text, verify the record before you write the story. If this made you think about how a boarding delay can quietly become a suspicion, tell us what you think gate staff should be required to check before calling for assistance. This is a fictional story created for storytelling purposes.